Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Views of an Outsider, The Outsider's View from June 28th. If you want to keep up with everything that's going on in the world, but you don't want to drag down your entire life by listening to the news every day, then get the main stories right here once a week, and spend the rest of your time actually living your best life. Let's get right into it. As last week drew to a close, federal authorities announced that 60-year-old Herbert Leon Kimball had been rearrested in the Philippines after failing to appear for his sentencing in August of 2024 to pay the penalty for his billion-dollar theft scam. His capture marked the second arrest in just a little over 2 weeks of crooks that are on the FBI's new Most Wanted Fraudsters list. The director of the FBI, Kash Patel, noted that Leon Kimball had been on the run ever since 2024 after he orchestrated a $1.2 billion theft via healthcare fraud in a scam that he ran from 2014 all the way up through 2019. Kimball had pled guilty in 2019 to multiple federal offenses, including conspiracy to defraud the United States of America, healthcare fraud, wire fraud, mail fraud, making false claims, and offering kickbacks and bribes to keep his theft going. Here are some of the details. Prosecutors said that Kimball's healthcare scam stole more than $1.2 billion from Medicare and added that it affected thousands of legitimate American beneficiaries, many of whom were elderly. Authorities specifically said that Kimball's operation used call centers to push patients towards medically unnecessary medical equipment, such as orthopedic braces. Taxpayers like us were left with more than $1 billion in entirely bogus charges, and after admitting to his guilt and entering that guilty plea, Kimball then fled before he could be sentenced to the consequences of his crime. Now, with this arrest, there is a face to attach to the large-scale versions of fraud like this that federal officials are trying to root out before the system is drained and collapses, stranding the actual people in need. Director Patel said that the FBI remains committed to carrying out this crackdown on fraud and to protecting taxpayers' hard-earned dollars from illegitimate theft by entirely malicious actors. As for the other most wanted scammer, Kimball's arrest came after federal officials announced their apprehension of 47-year-old Saeed Abdullah Ereg, who was wanted on charges of conspiracy to commit wire fraud, as well as for actual wire fraud and money laundering. Ereg became the first person on the list to be taken into custody, but he will not be the last. And Vice President J.D. Vance pointed to the effectiveness of creating this Most Wanted Fraudsters list, posting, "Our message is simple. If you defraud the American people, we will find you, and we will bring you to justice." Kimball preyed on the elderly for years, costing taxpayers over $1 billion. The FBI catching Kimball is a direct result of the task force partnership with the FBI to create the Most Wanted Fraudsters list. He added that authorities had been unable to capture Kimball for months, but that the Philippine government helped us locate him after the Justice Department published its list. Both of these arrests came within months of the Justice Department announcing the creation of its National Fraud Enforcement Division to support the Vice President's task force to investigate and eliminate fraud in government programs such as Medicare and Medicaid. The acting Attorney General, Todd Blanche, had this to add: fleeing the United States does not mean you can flee justice. Instead of facing accountability for his $1.2 billion Medicare fraud crimes in the United States, Kimball fled to the Philippines, hoping to escape justice. That plan failed. A.G. Blanche pointed out that the FBI's apprehension of these two massive fraudsters from its recently unveiled list in just 2 weeks is just the beginning, promising that there will be more to come. As this week got started, Keir Starmer finally did what millions of Britons had been making it perfectly clear that they wanted. On Monday, the Prime Minister announced his resignation as the leader of the Labour Party after losing the confidence of his own MPs, ending a short tenure marked by extremist crackdowns on free speech, grooming gang scandals involving the mass rape and trafficking of British children, vile terrorist attacks being perpetrated against peaceful civilians, a virtue-signaling Palestinian statehood blunder that left Britain's allies both fuming and vomiting, and achieving the status of becoming the most unpopular British Prime Minister by the polls in Britain's entire history, ever since these things started being tracked. Yet, with all evidence to the contrary, outside of 10 Downing Street, Starmer declared, "Every decision I've taken has been about putting the country I love first. That is why I will resign as leader of the Labour Party." Bye, Felicia. Those who follow the international news know that the writing has been on the wall for months at the very least. Labour's share of the vote cratered to a humiliating 17% during May's local elections, while Nigel Farage's small Reform UK party surged past them to grab 26% of the power given by the people. Starmer was already the least popular prime minister since records began at that point. But after that, he lost his party, lost what he had left of the public, and after vowing to stay where he was clearly not wanted, amid the rising turmoil, he finally lost his nerve. Starmer spent his final months in office under heavy fire for his failure to address Britain's entirely broken national health care service and for his adamant refusal to address the mass immigration crisis and the resulting violence that is being perpetrated on Britain's indigenous population, as well as coming under fire for banning foreign speakers from entering the country for a conservative rally, including banning a conservative member of the EU Parliament. That would be the duly elected Polish MEP, Dominik Tarczynski, who was supposed to attend and speak at the Unite the Kingdom rally in London, with Starmer's Home Office declaring that the presence of the speakers that they had barred from entering the country was, quote, not conducive to the public good. Apparently, only letting in refugees from Sudan who try to behead innocent people on the streets does that. While prominent Muslims in Britain crowed that the ban on conservative speakers was their doing, indicating that they controlled policy for all by controlling Starmer, who is now out. Barred, but not beaten, Tarczynski wasn't having it, firing back, "This is what communism looks like in the 21st century," vowing to sue Starmer personally with the promise, "Once you lose the next election, communist, we'll meet in court." The bans drew instant, justified accusations of hypocrisy, as Starmer had not blocked any of the radical participants for the pro-Palestine Nakba Day march that took place on the same day. Critics noted very selective concerns about what was good for the public, and two-tiered enforcement of those standards was classic for Starmer, via an entirely consistent record going all the way back to his days as Director of Public Prosecutions, when his office dragged its feet, to put it mildly, on prosecuting the Pakistani grooming gangs that were responsible for sexually abusing at least 1,400 British children in Rotherham alone. Yet on St. George's Day, he called patriots plastic, mocking any Britons who dared to fly their own national flag in pride. In 2020, he championed Black Lives Matter rioters as being people rightly demanding justice via burning, looting, vandalism, and even murder. Yet in August of 2024, Starmer called the anti-immigration protests, who were outraged after the son of immigrants from Rwanda stabbed 3 little girls to death with a knife in Southport for dancing, calling the protesters of that act far-right thugs. Then Starmer's government surrendered British territory to Mauritius, I'm probably mispronouncing that, for $46 billion in what critics called a stunning act of national self-harm. To top it all off, Starmer recognized Palestinian statehood with 0 conditions: no borders, no government, none of the actual requirements, just a fantasy of a virtually virtue-signaling show to hand a diplomatic prize, signaling approval, for the celebrated October 7th massacre. He might as well have been recognizing Narnia, but the point was the show and to signal approval, not the entirely empty reality that there is no Palestinian state and not likely to be for a very long time. The Tory leader, Kemi Badenoch, scorched Starmer on this and all of his other atrocious moves, declaring they cannot fix the NHS, so they push assisted suicide. He will spend the next 4 years delivering the hobby horses of the Labour left to stay in power and leave a huge mess for us to clean up. That day is finally beginning to dawn, at least partly. Now the scramble is on for Labour to replace him. The mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burgum, is the front runner after he won an election that sent him back to the House of Commons. The former Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, Ed Miliband, and Angela Rayner are also circling the bones. Starmer says he will stay on as caretaker prime minister until a new leader emerges, which is supposed to happen before Parliament returns to work in September. No worries, boys. I mean, Britain can just burn from various fires while you take your summer vacation. Meanwhile, Colombia became the latest South American nation to finally reject socialism in favor of giving power to a right-wing president who will free the economy and crack down on the crime that makes life truly unlivable for the people via the aggressive destruction of the violent criminal cartels that have grown unchecked into massive threats to the ordinary people under left-wing policies and governments. And the people are over it. Over the poverty, over the crime, and the dangerous streets that they are forced to live in. And that is why they are changing course. Reality is always undefeated. Ignoring it as a political party is a decision to your own peril. But if that was what was going on down south, what was going on up north? Well, I'll tell you. On Monday, a gunman opened fire in a Jewish district of Montreal, leaving 1 police officer and 1 civilian dead, as a second officer was left fighting for his life in the hospital. This attack unfolded shortly before noon, when Montreal police received reports of an armed and dangerous individual in the streets. The officers who responded to the scene immediately came under fire, In fact, witnesses described hearing between 20 and 30 shots in rapid succession before the parents at a nearby park realized what was happening, grabbed their small children, and fled. One resident of the area, Brandon Benchimol El-Kayam, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name, said that when the first shots went off, we thought it was construction noise. Then parents started yanking their kids off the playground and running. Something didn't feel right. That was the consensus from above as well. Authorities broadcast an emergency alert across radio, television, and mobile devices, ordering residents throughout the surrounding area to shelter indoors, lock their doors, and stay away from any windows, leaving approximately 100 people to shelter inside of a local supermarket during the violent standoff. Shortly after 1:20, Montreal police announced that this rampaging suspect had been neutralized. Shortly after, authorities confirmed that a police officer and a civilian had also been fatally shot, while the second officer was said to be in critical condition. Video footage from the scene showed the apparently white suspect, dressed in camouflage, lying face down on the ground alongside what appeared to be a rifle. The neighborhood that he targeted is home to one of Montreal's largest Orthodox Jewish communities, with many kosher restaurants, Jewish schools, a Jewish center, and multiple Jewish community organizations being concentrated along the same streets where this shooting occurred. Authorities had not officially established a motive as of Monday afternoon. It is mysterious. But what is a matter of public record is that Montreal has seen wave after wave of anti-Semitic violence. Just in recent months alone, that city has seen 2 firebombing attacks against Temple Emmanuel Beth Shalom, one of the city's oldest synagogues. Plus, a Jewish father was beaten in front of his children in a local park. There have also been shootings near Jewish schools and houses of worship in this same neighborhood. And this problem is sadly widespread in Canada, extending far beyond just Montreal. Last year, in 2025, nationwide, in a country with a very small population compared to us, B'nai B'rith Canada recorded 6,800 anti-Semitic incidents all across the country. That is the highest figure that has ever been recorded since tracking first began in 1982. You might want to import fewer IRGC members intent on radicalizing your young people. Just a suggestion. And speaking of countries catering to unhealthy radicals to their own detriment, on Tuesday, an Australian court openly catered to dangerous extremism and political violence by ruling that the footage of 2 so-called nurses who were recorded openly bragging that they would murder any innocent Israeli patients in their care cannot be used against them at trial. That's convenient. Sydney's Downton Centre District Court Judge, Michael McHugh, decided to uphold the non-existent right to threaten to victimize vulnerable patients suffering a medical crisis based on their race and religion by dealing a potentially fatal blow to the prosecution and tossing the viral video of 28-year-old radical bigot Ahmed Nadir and 27-year-old radical bigot Sarah Abu Lebda. If I'm mispronouncing either one of your names, I don't give a damn. Because the video of the threats that no one forced or even asked them to make was recorded online, where we all know that privacy does not exist including them, without their consent, as they were voluntarily streaming themselves, making these threats, implying consent. That footage sparked international outrage when it surfaced in February of 2025, as it showed the vile pair making chilling threats during a random online chat with the Israeli influencer, Max Pfeiffer, while they were working a night shift at Bankstown Lidcombe Hospital in southwest Sydney. But instead of working and seeing to the needs of their patients, as they were being paid to do, they were busy threatening to kill this Jewish influencer and any other Jew who showed up as a patient in their hospital. To be exact, in the video, when asked about her responsibility as a healthcare worker to treat all patients, including Israeli patients, Sarah Abu Lebda declared, "I won't treat them. I will kill them." "You seem lovely." Mr. Pfeiffer pressed her. "You'll kill them?" So if an Israeli is in Australia and, God forbid, something happened to him and he came to your hospital, you would kill him? Ahmad Nadir answered that one by making a throat-slitting gesture. Then he said, "You have no idea how many Israelis came to this hospital," and then the big talking coward trailed off, before eventually taking up the big talk again despite himself and boasting that he had already sent many Israeli patients to hell. Nadir later tried to walk it back, telling the Sydney Daily Telegraph that what he had said was, quote, "a joke, a misunderstanding." No, I think we all understand exactly what you are with 100% accuracy, basing that judgment on your words that you let escape your own mouth. Out of the heart, the mouth speaks. And your heart, sir, is vile. And I was not alone in that feeling. The video of their own gleeful threats was so clear that not a single person who saw it for themselves bought that cowardly claim of it being a joke or a misunderstanding for a second. Meanwhile, the judge performatively acknowledged the obvious outrageousness of what was voluntarily said of their own free will, calling the nurse's alleged statements, quote, "at the very least, highly disturbing to right-minded people." But then he tossed out the evidence anyway, citing both the supposed privacy violations and the footage's viral spread across social media and news outlets worldwide, which I would point out is beside the point, having nothing to do with nothing, because either everyone has already seen it and so there's no point in getting rid of it as evidence, or the jury hasn't seen it, in which case the fact that everyone else has is no reason for them not to view it as part of the evidence. And by the way, the video going viral is entirely the perpetrator's own fault. Prosecutors argued that the random and public nature of the platform that was being used at the time, chat roulette, by its nature, meant that these nurses had no reasonable expectation of privacy when it came to the threats that they were making of their own free will instead of caring for the patients that they were being paid to provide care to. This disgusting pair of extremist bigots who pled not guilty are still scheduled to face trial on August 31st. But in the meantime, at least both of them were fired and suspended indefinitely from being entrusted to practice nursing anywhere in Australia after the video went viral, and the public pressure created appropriate consequences, even if the courts cannot manage to do the same. As for the trial, without the footage, the prosecution's case is uncertain at best. Back over here, we had to face the consequences of our own bad decisions to prioritize virtue signaling over realities. Last week, a man who routinely boasted about being the first open drag queen to be elected to a school board anywhere in the United States was surprisingly arrested for participating in disturbing sex crimes involving children as young as 18 months old. 46-year-old Travis Longo is the vice president of the Board of Education for Cazenovia Central School District in New York State, and he has been ever since he was elected to that school board in 2024. The initial charges against him were over his apparent pattern of sending explicit communications to a child who was under the age of 12 years old. But once the authorities seized and searched Longo's phone in relation to that crime, truly disturbing child pornography was discovered. Tyler Toomey, a spokesperson for the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Northern District of New York, said that some of the videos on Longo's device depicted the sexual abuse of infants, which this drag queen who wanted to be on a school board was apparently into. He has now been charged federally with receiving and possessing child pornography, as well as facing 4 counts of endangering the welfare of a child in state court. As the New York radio host and journalist Bob Lonsberry commented online, who'd have thought that electing a drag queen to a school board could go wrong? Cazenovia, New York School Board Vice President Travis Longo was arrested last week on state charges of having sexually explicit communications with a child under 12 and on federal charges of possessing pornography depicting the sexual abuse of infants. But apparently, some people struggle with common sense. They can't see the difference between letting a kinky person be kinky on their own time and giving that kinky person access to kids. Common sense is just not their strong suit. For example, in one video, a school board member boasted about Longo's leadership in the community and explicitly went out of their way to say that he's not a predator. A disclaimer that I also randomly attach to all of the people I know. This is Bob. He's not a predator. The superintendent of the Cazenovia School District, Kevin Link, said in a statement that Longo is currently barred from being on any school grounds or attending any events that are sponsored by the school, but he also indicated that Longo is still on the school board, saying that he is not an employee of the district. He was elected by the Cazenovia voters to a 3-year term in May of 2024. The role of a school board member is not a student-facing role. Too easy. Please be assured that we take all such matters with the utmost seriousness. If that was actually true, then you would have elected stable, safe, basic people to be around your kids and to determine their education, indoctrination, grooming, whatever it is you call it up there. But he promised. The district has retained and is working closely with legal counsel to review the matter thoroughly and determine the appropriate immediate steps. Because it is a mystery as to whether it is appropriate or not for a drag queen who likes to watch infants being raped should be on a school board. In the interim, the individual in question will not be permitted on any school grounds or at any district-sponsored events. The safety, well-being, and peace of mind of our students, staff, and community remains our absolute highest priorities. Oh, clearly. Because this involves an ongoing administrative and legal matter, we are strictly limited in the specific details we can share publicly. How convenient for you. However, please know that we are taking all necessary actions to ensure a safe, secure, and focused learning environment. Well, you certainly have proven that you deserve that kind of trust, haven't you? We will update you as more information becomes available. Sure you will. Well, these days there are really only 3 discussions being had. Public sexual kink extremism, usually related to gender and trans stuff. Mass, unvetted immigration extremism, usually related to violence, scams, and societal impacts. And radical Islamist extremism, usually related to either terrorism or Iran. But I repeat myself. On Monday, in a letter that was addressed to Vice President Vance, Samir Giregia, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name, the leader of the Lebanese Forces, which is the largest Christian party in Lebanon, begged that the United States would support the Lebanese state in extending its rightful authority over all of its own territory, ending Hezbollah's military and security presence there, a presence that is an occupation, and restricting weapons to legitimate institutions only. But so far, all that the Vice President has shown any interest in is a so-called mechanism emerging from talks with Iran, Qatar, and Pakistan, while excluding Lebanon and Israel and limiting Israeli responses to threats from Hezbollah in Lebanon by allowing Israel to respond only to imminent threats rather than continuing to use the emerging threats standard that was included in the 2024 mechanism according to the Times of Israel. The Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, denied that part of the report, saying that the Israel Defense Forces faced no restrictions in Lebanon. Either way, Mr. Giregia said that the greatest aid that the United States could offer at this stage would be to support the Lebanese state as the sole national authority in its own country, instead of treating the affairs of their country as a matter to be negotiated with Iran. Mr. Giregia also asked for assurances that any negotiations about Lebanon would go through the Lebanese government alone, given that neither Iran, Qatar, nor Pakistan have any legitimate right to even having a say in what happens in someone else's country. Mr. Giregia argued that this commitment from America would be the most meaningful step for Lebanon's Christians and for all Lebanese citizens, because it would open the door for them to regain a sovereign state that was capable of providing security, stability, and prosperity for their people. The leader of the Lebanese Christians diplomatically made sure to add that he had reviewed Vance's statement on Iran with interest and appreciation, claiming that the Vice President's remarks reflected genuine friendship and profound concern, not only for Lebanese Christians, but for Lebanon as a whole. Mr. Giregia also framed Lebanon's Christians as a stabilizing force in that country's modern history, describing them as being committed to openness, moderation, freedom, and cultural life in a region that is now marked by rampaging instability ever since the PLO and Hezbollah invaded that once very thriving country. As he argued, Lebanon's pluralism, public freedoms, and open system have long made their country distinct in the Middle East. But he pointed out that the last 4 decades have been especially difficult for Lebanese Christians and other Lebanese citizens because of Hezbollah's rise as a military power and as a so-called security organization. He rightly accused Hezbollah of usurping decision-making for that nation, weakening the country's legitimate institutions, blocking the formation of an effective state, and dragging Lebanon into multiple conflicts that were part of Iran's agendas and had nothing to do with the interests of Lebanon. He pointed out that the impact for his hostage people has been economic decline, fewer job opportunities, and the immigration of many Lebanese to other countries, including a significant number of Christians that have been forced to seek safety, stability, and a dignified life elsewhere, as the IDF has accused Hezbollah operatives of using Christian areas as cover. For example, earlier this month, the IDF said that dozens of Hezbollah members were hiding inside of a Christian neighborhood in the coastal city of Tyre, an area that had not been included in a previous evacuation warning. I mean, terrorists love their civilian casualties. They set it up that way so that they can claim that they actually care when they're the cause of the deaths. The IDF's allegation only adds weight to the concern Mr. Geagea raised in his letter that Hezbollah's unwelcome military presence has not only fatally weakened the Lebanese state, but it has exposed Lebanese civilians, including Christians, to massive instability and danger. Mr. Geagea closed his letter by thanking Vice President Vance again for his concern and said that he hoped that the United States would remain a key partner in helping Lebanon reclaim its former identity as a model of freedom, pluralism, and peace in the Middle East. Back over here, we have our own form of terrorists holding society hostage. That would be career criminals and the soft-on-crime policies that continually re-inflict them on innocent society. A 34-year-old black man is facing criminal charges for attempted murder after he apparently attacked and strangled a random woman inside of a Target store in California, all of which was caught on security footage. And it turns out that he did this mere hours after being released from police custody for other convictions of crimes against innocent people in society. Here's what happened. According to the Ventura County District Attorney's Office, on June 17th, Regine Morgan Tabor entered a Target store in Simi Valley, California, where he approached a woman from behind and strangled her while covering her nose and mouth so that she could not breathe. The dramatic video captured the final moments of that violent and seemingly random attack as multiple bystanders rushed in like heroes to save the victim as she fought desperately for her very life and very nearly lost. Then one bystander could be heard saying, "Her eyes are bloodshot. She's hurt. Call 911. Another bystander said, "He was choking her. She's almost dead. I don't know who that guy is." But we do. Tabor had been released from custody less than 24 hours earlier. He wasn't done inflicting violence on random, law-abiding people. Next, he turned on the Good Samaritans in revenge for stopping him before he could complete the taking of innocent life. Prosecutors said as other shoppers rushed to help, Tabor allegedly attacked multiple Good Samaritans who intervened. One woman was pushed to the ground while attempting to pull Tabor away from the victim. Another shopper was allegedly bitten, struck, and scratched while helping free the victim from the attacker. Before police confronted and arrested the suspect, Tabor also allegedly threw a glass bottle at a Target employee and attacked a 16-year-old customer from behind. Yeah, this sounds like someone that authorities would have had no idea was out of control and a danger. I'm sure he behaved himself perfectly in jail. There was no evidence of this. Sure. Target shoppers had their own comments on the harrowing experience that was needlessly inflicted on them by California's reckless criminal justice system. One female shopper recounted, "Yeah, he was choking the shit out of some lady over there in the clothes, and I dove down to try and pry him off, and then I got scared. He looked crazy. I'm just rattled because the lady looked like she was near death." In a news release, all that society's authorities had to say for themselves was the alleged attack inside Target occurred less than 24 hours after Tabor was released from custody on mandatory supervision, following his completed sentencing in 2 separate Ventura County criminal cases. In addition to attempted murder, Tabor also now faces charges for the violence that he inflicted on 4 additional victims, including 2 misdemeanor counts of battery, 1 misdemeanor count of assault, and another misdemeanor count of child abuse for allegedly inflicting physical injury on a minor. According to local prosecutors, at his first court appearance, no plea was entered, and proceedings were suspended after his attorney raised concerns about his competency. His lack of competency didn't stop him from being released onto innocent people. By the way, an insanity plea is not supposed to mean freedom. It is supposed to mean involuntary commitment to a psychiatric facility instead of involuntary commitment to a jail. For now, he is back behind bars where he belongs and will stay unless someone posts his 750,000 bail. He is scheduled for a competency hearing on July 16th. But California is not the only state out there that allows truly sick individuals to inflict harm on others just so that they can pat themselves on the back. During a New York City public school dance routine, elementary school children pretended to be shot by the police, shocking both their parents and law enforcement alike. PS 075, a school on the Upper West Side, put on this play without providing any information about the sick content to the parents that were out in the audience. Their dance was choreographed to the song Glory by the singer John Legend and the rapper Common, a song with lyrics that reference Ferguson, Missouri, where Michael Brown was shot by a white police officer, Darren Wilson, in what was ruled to be a clear case of self-defense, as Brown attacked the officer inside of his vehicle and attempted to take his weapon. Those facts did not stop that case from continuing to be used as propaganda by bad actors to this day, and children are apparently their preferred target. To top off the blatant indoctrination, during the chorus, as the children performed, they were instructed to kneel, mimicking the former San Francisco 49ers quarterback, Colin Kaepernick's refusal to stand during the national anthem before NFL games. Then these 10 and 11-year-old kids pretended to be shot by police. And after the sick performance, students became pure, dehumanized props that were used by leftists to hold up signs with leftist slogans, including "Ice Out." Do you guys see anyone as a human being? Like an actual frickin' human being? Even kids? Because you don't act like it. This insane, unhinged, and entirely indefensible dance routine inflicted on kids who are supposed to be in school is only the latest form of heavy-handed leftist indoctrination at PS 075. And I make a distinction between liberals, as in people on the left who support liberty, and leftists, as in far-left fascists, who like to ideologically rape children by putting their thoughts into those kids' heads. That school also hosts a rainbow room where children as young as kindergarteners are encouraged to access sexual LGBTQ content without the knowledge or consent of their parents, as well as having an all-gender bathroom in which there has been ongoing harassment of girls according to the parents. But leftists care about no human being, including children, when it comes to the prioritization of their cult ideology. And it is a cult. When it reaches this point, it's a cult. This performance was organized by a teacher named Shireen Karim, and I assume that she would want to be known for it, because she's proud of it, so let's help her out. And this was not her only contribution. For Multicultural Day in 2024, Shireen Karim organized the Dabki dance, the Arab folk dance that is often performed at pro-Palestine rallies. Shireen Karim is also the head of the school's multicultural committee. And now Shireen Karim has taken exploiting the kids that are in her care to a whole new level of sick with this mentally disturbed performance. One NYPD officer called it, quote, effing insane, rightly telling the New York Post, this is beyond inappropriate. It's outrageous. Having fifth graders pretend to be shot by police is not education. It's political indoctrination and exploitation of children. You may be interested to know that PS 075 also just hosted the public reading of a transgender book to 7-year-old students without providing any notice about it to the parents. New York City's Department of Education responded by saying that they intend to not stop promoting political and sexual indoctrination during hours that are supposed to be used for education, at which they are failing, by the way, but to at least require schools to give parents advanced notice of the school events that will take place, where the education time will be reallocated to introducing them to a lifestyle with a very high suicide rate and genital mutilation. Sounds fair, right? Meanwhile, the Department of Education did not issue any condemnation at all of this insanely politicized performance or announce any disciplinary action against the school or against the so-called teacher Shireen Karim. But, what is the worst that can happen when you let radical loons indoctrinate vulnerable young people year after year if it makes them happy? Well, not happy, whatever they are. The Antifa anarchist who led an ambush at the ICE detention center in Texas on the last 4th of July has been sentenced. And he will spend a whole century behind bars. I hope that entire sentence answers that question. Prosecutors made an airtight case that convicted former Marine Corps reservist Benjamin Hanel Song of shooting a police officer in the throat during the July 4th, 2025 attack, before running and hiding from the authorities for a week. And then he was eventually caught, which is what happens. On Tuesday, he received the maximum sentence for the crimes that he committed at the Prairieland Detention Center in Alvarado, Texas. The maximum being 100 years in prison. His life is over, and you only get one. Brilliant decision-making. 7 other Antifa members also received their sentences alongside their leader, Song. The lightest sentence was 30 years in prison. The longest sentence, apart from Song's, was 70 years in a concrete box with bars. That is all according to the reporting from KXAN. So let's recap. During their ambush, these leftist anarchists in military gear hurled fireworks at the building in order to lure the officers outside, where they opened fire on them. According to the court documents, in total, these shooters fired roughly 20 to 30 rounds at law enforcement. And prosecutors said that it was Song who shot a local police officer in the neck. That officer has, thankfully, since made a full recovery, according to Alvarado's police chief, Teddy May, which is more than can be said for the life of his would-be killer. Speaking of which, the Antifa cell had flyers reading, quote, "Fight ICE terror with class war." They sound like stable and happy people. And free all political prisoners. Oh, so they need dictionaries. Problem solved. As well as having a flag with the words, "Resist fascism. Fight oligarchy." Oh, the irony. They also spray-painted the words "Ice Pig" on a nearby vehicle, and at least they spelled it right, and the words "F you pigs" on a guard shack. Funny. That's the same redundant phrase that your new cellmates intend to carve into your ass. Have fun. For his part, Song was accused of firing 2 AR-15 style rifles at 3 ICE officers during his violent crime spree. He also was the one who recruited his co-conspirators for the attack, and he was the one who distributed firearms to them. According to KXAN, prosecutors allege that Song also gave the orders to initiate the shootout, yelling for the group to get to the rifles, and opened fire before he shot a police officer. He was convicted of all of this in March, including attempted murder of that Alvarado police officer. During Tuesday's sentencing, the U.S. District Judge Reed O'Connor rightly called his perpetrated attack an assault on democracy, meaning what the people voted for. Yeah, I know, this is where the dictionaries would help again, while also rightly pointing out that the need to deter this type of conduct is high. So he gave him the equivalent of 99 years in the Folsom Pen. After sentencing, Song's attorney, Philip Hayes, had this insane claim to try to sell someone. This is a bunch of kids and young adults who really have a really big heart and really wanted their voice to be heard. It was never intended that anybody get hurt. It was never intended that any shots would be fired. Oh, so that's why you brought AKs and ordered others to open fire before your eye took aim and your finger pulled the trigger all by themselves. These morons really do think that all of us are dumber than dirt, which only shows how dumb they are. As far as the big picture, this trial marked the first federal domestic terrorism case against Antifa members since the administration first designated that highly violent anarchist group as a terrorist organization last fall. And while we're on the subject of terrorists, on Wednesday, CENTCOM announced that a senior ISIS leader, Ali Hussein al-Ulawi, and if I'm mispronouncing your name, I truly don't give a damn, had been killed in a precision airstrike by the United States, so apparently you no longer give a damn either. In northwest Syria, on June 19th, as part of the ongoing U.S. counterterrorism operations against the remnants of ISIS in that region. ISIS remains significantly weakened, but they still pose a very real security threat in parts of Syria and Iraq. ISIS lost the last bit of the territory in its self-declared caliphate back in 2019. But that bloody group has remained a concern for both the United States and for regional forces, as both have worked to prevent its resurgence in Syria and Iraq. Security officials have warned that ISIS continues to operate through their sleeper cells and insurgent networks, which are capable of carrying out attacks and exploiting security gaps, and do. So in Syria, U.S. forces and local partners have continued targeting ISIS remnants through operations including raids and airstrikes, all driven by highly effective intelligence. These continued operations underscore the reality that ISIS no longer holds the same power that it once did. But as long as it poses a danger and spreads death, it will remain a target of counterterrorism efforts that will be backed by the United States of America. As part of those efforts, in February, CENTCOM said that U.S. forces had completed a 23-day mission transferring more than 5,700 ISIS adult male fighters from detention facilities in Syria and handing them over to Iraqi custody in order to keep the ISIS prisoners secure and prevent a resurgence in Syria. At the time, Reuters reported that U.S. officials viewed that transfer as being very strategically important while instability continued in northeast Syria. CENTCOM also said that it continues to work with our regional partners in counterterrorism operations across both Syria and Iraq. As CENTCOM's commander, Admiral Brad Cooper, said, CENTCOM and our partners remain committed to rooting out remaining remnants of ISIS to ensure its enduring defeat. We will continue to defend the U.S. homeland, our service members, and allies and partners across the region. If you happen to experience a giraffe sighting, you haven't lost your mind. I know, that was a hard pivot. One is on the loose in Texas after escaping from a breeding facility 2 weeks ago. According to an NBC interview with the facility's manager, Vic Jones, the towering little adventurer is 4-year-old Gracie. She apparently left Cedar Hollow Ranch in Real County, Texas, to go on a bit of an American walkabout. Hey, the Europeans are doing it. Why can't she? Everybody loves America, people. Cedar Hollow Ranch is a private breeding facility that is home to hundreds of exotic animals, including Nubian ibexes, antelope, impalas, and other creatures that are native to Africa and the Middle East. Gracie, the lost giraffe, reportedly vanished after feeding on an isolated hillside and finding an unfenced area opposite of an 8-foot-tall gate. What's the point of the gate if part of it's unfenced? I'm confused. Mr. Jones said that this giraffe would often walk around the ranch like none of the others did, adding that Gracie would go to secluded areas and eat on the tree limbs. Hey, sometimes you just need some you time, okay? Since exploring beyond the limits of the ranch, Gracie has been spotted a few times. The last official sighting of her was by a hunting camera west of Leakey, Texas, which is about 100 miles northwest of San Antonio. Mr. Jones believes that the giraffe is likely somewhere in the rough terrain that surrounds the southern area of Texas, and that she most likely is still safe and healthy, noting there's a lot of food out there for her to eat. There's plenty of water. According to the Denver Zoo, giraffes around Gracie's age are about 14 to 16 feet tall and can run up to 35 miles per hour in short bursts. It should also be noted that Gracie's species of giraffe is listed as being endangered, on the red list for the International Union for Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources. No one knows how to edit these days. It's sad. Let's bring it back, people. Between that and the unusual nature of the story itself, in which you lost a creature that towers at 16 feet tall, the disappearance of this Lone Star giraffe made waves across the internet, with many unhelpful users creating fake AI-generated videos of false sightings of Gracie, wasting valuable time. That is all according to the reports by My San Antonio News. For example, in one AI-generated photo, a giraffe is seen surrounded by police while trying to cross a Texas highway at dusk. So on Wednesday morning, Mr. Jones made it clear that no, she has not been found. That's just people having fun with the internet, getting their little 1 minute of fame. I mean, technically, not even that. The video may have gotten views, but who can tell me the name of the jerk who made it? Then he got no fame. His video got a little bit, but he didn't. Mr. Jones added that there were no new clues on the giraffe's actual location. Meanwhile, Real County officials said that Gracie's owner is offering a $5,000 reward for tips leading to her safe return. People who actually spot the sightseeing giraffe are asked to report that information to the local sheriff's office at 830-232-5201. Meanwhile, President Trump had a surprise of his own on Wednesday, stunning lawmakers with the announcement that he would not be coming to Capitol Hill, as planned, to sign the much-discussed housing bill, posting mid-morning that he had canceled his planned press conference and would not be signing the housing bill until lawmakers passed the Safeguard America Voter Eligibility Act, known as the SAVE Act, to verify through ID that only those who are eligible to vote do. The 21st Century Road to Housing Bill has passed both the House of Representatives and the Senate with strong bipartisan support. But the President of the United States has veto power. He's not going that far, but here is what he did have to say. Today's housing news conference and signing is hereby canceled until such time as we pass the desperately needed Save America Act, which I consider to be a national emergency, adding the Elizabeth Pocahontas Warren-centric housing bill, which is of minor importance compared to lower interest rates and even FISA, pales in comparison to passing the Save America Act. That is what Americans, both Democrats, Republicans, and everyone else cares about. Get the bad Republicans to approve it, or better yet, terminate the filibuster and approve it. The Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson of Louisiana, said that he had spoken to Trump about the Save America Act before a Republican conference meeting on Wednesday morning. Speaker Johnson said that he told Trump that the bill had passed the House multiple times, which is true, but is stuck in the Senate due to opposition from Senate Democrats, adding, you have to put it in a reconciliation bill. Trump had other ideas. His announcement actually came while Johnson and other Republican leaders were holding a news conference highlighting the housing legislation. After the post, Speaker Johnson told reporters he decided, and I didn't announce it, I wanted him to announce it, but we're delaying this. As you know, he has a window of time before he has to sign a bill, and he's going to use a little bit more of this window of time, and we're going to go through this together. But that wasn't the only shakeup in the headlines that day. Later that afternoon, 2 major earthquakes struck on opposite sides of the globe within hours of each other, toppling buildings in Venezuela with a 7.2 magnitude earthquake and triggering alarms in Japan with a 6.9. Videos circulating on social media captured dramatic scenes as residents in Venezuela rushed out of dilapidated buildings carrying their pets to safety. Another video appeared to show plumes of smoke above completely destroyed structures. According to the USGS, just minutes after that, an even more powerful 7.5 aftershock also rocked the region. Severe damage was reported at one of the country's airports, which was shown on social media. According to Reuters, the U.S. tsunami warning system also did issue a tsunami threat for Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. It was not immediately clear whether anyone had been injured or killed in either earthquake, but later it was reported that at least 235 people had, in fact, been killed, and nearly 4,300 more had, in fact, been injured, with the numbers still climbing in both categories. And the Venezuelan government believes that around 50,000 people are still missing. Meanwhile, a powerful earthquake also struck off the northern coast of Japan on what for them was Thursday, but there was apparently no danger of a tsunami, according to that country's meteorological agency, and they would know. Japan is among the most earthquake-prone nations on Earth because of its location on the Pacific Ring of Fire. To top all of it off, earlier that morning there had also been a milder 5.6 earthquake reported near Northern California. According to the New York Times, California residents from Eureka all the way to Sacramento reported feeling the shaking from that earthquake. Well, at least they can't blame earthquakes on climate change and carbon. Although I'm sure someone will try, and that'll be fun to listen to. That is not me making fun of the victims. I just happen to agree with the person who says that saying that something is too serious to joke about is like saying that cancer is too serious to cure. Laughter is curative. It is unifying. It is good for us. It does not mean that you're mocking the victims in any way. And while we're already in Cali, a former superintendent at California's state parks is now facing 31 criminal charges for secretly recording nearly 24 different naked lifeguards in a Southern California locker room without their knowledge or consent, and then distributing those non-consensual explicit images to 2 other pervy men. Now, just as a little experiment, before I give you more details, I want you to stop and note how you feel internally about this perv doing that to people, to actual human beings, violating them in that non-consensual way. Okay, remember that feeling, because we will circle back around to it. Here's what happened. From 2023 through July 2025, Kevin Pearsall of Long Beach, California, served as a California State Park Superintendent, a sworn law enforcement position overseeing the management and operations of state parks in Orange County. He was first hired by California State Parks in 1994. According to Orange County prosecutors, in August of 2024, after becoming superintendent, Kevin Pearsall, who is nearly 60 years old, apparently set up a camera inside the men's employee locker room at Bolsa Chica State Beach Lifeguard Headquarters in Huntington Beach, California. Almost a year later, a California State Parks officer found a USB flash drive in the men's employee locker room, which prosecutors say included non-consensual videos of these state employees undressing. California State Parks then contacted the California Highway Patrol to investigate, and the device was found to contain footage from a hidden camera. According to authorities, The employee locker room is not open to the public, but it is only accessible to full-time personnel, seasonal lifeguards, office staff, maintenance, and park aides. The hidden camera, capturing both audio and video, continued to violate state employees from August of 2024 through July of 2025. The Orange County District Attorney's Office stated, the CHP investigation identified 23 different men who had their genitals or buttocks filmed by the hidden camera placed in the employee locker room by Persol. None of the men agreed to be recorded, end quote. Authorities allege that Pervy Persol then sent the stolen, non-consensual nude images of 3 of his victims to 2 other men and made sexually explicit contents about his employees' genitals. Orange County's District Attorney, Scott Spitzer, pointed out instead of protecting his employees, Persol used his position to spy on the men who worked for him while they were in the place where they should have been the safest, and then share those intimate images of his victims. These victims have their privacy violated in such a disgusting way, and we will do everything we can to ensure they receive the justice they deserve. According to prosecutors, on Tuesday, July 23rd, Persol turned himself in on a $500,000 arrest warrant and was then released by a judge on his own recognizance. He has been charged with 5 felony counts of eavesdropping, 23 misdemeanor counts of secretly filming another, and 3 misdemeanor counts of unlawful dissemination of private recordings. That's California justice for you. Sexual exploitation of your employees is a misdemeanor. Kind of like the guy who was assaulting people, trying to kill them in Walmart. That also was mainly misdemeanor charges. Battery, misdemeanor assault, misdemeanor child abuse. These are misdemeanors in California. Now, back to your feelings. If you are a supporter of Me Too and were outraged when you thought that these victims were female, if you now find that you feel any differently about it just because the victims of non-consensual exploitation in the workplace, in this case, are male, then you do not believe in principles like consent. You believe in political bandwagons. A human being is a human being, and exploitation is exploitation. Non-consent is non-consent. And your outrage should not be based on who the victim is and whether or not they fit into a high enough category on your particular priority list. It should be based on the principle. Otherwise, you have just proven that you don't actually believe in the right and wrong of the principle that you espouse, which may come back around to bite you at some point. That is why I would encourage everyone to have integrity about what they believe, rather than siding with their teams at the expense of integrity. If convicted on all counts, Persol faces a maximum sentence of 18 years and 8 months in prison. His next court appearance is set for August 6th. And while we are on the subject of team-playing hypocrites with no principles, let's turn to the experts, as we are supposed to do. Earlier this week, the observers of the UN Human Rights Council fell into a heavy, awkward silence as a small woman walked to the microphone and did something that the most powerful human rights body in the world, with all of its supposed charitable branches, has failed to do. She bore witness to principle and truth. Ilana Grzycki, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing her name, is a survivor of Hamas's October 7th massacre. As such, she refused to be erased when she stood in front of a sneering Reem al-Salem. If I'm mispronouncing your name, I could not give less of a damn. The UN's own special rapporteur on violence against women, a Jordanian. What followed was one of the most searingly eye-opening moments in recent UN history, not because of what she said in response to the testimony of this brutalized female victim of violence, her speciality, but because of what she did not say as the person in that position. Ilana Grzycki recounted what happened on the October morning that bloodthirsty terrorists stormed her peaceful kibbutz looking for random bloodshed, detailing their murders, their burnings, kidnappings, and rape. She described being beaten and sexually abused until she lost consciousness, waking up half naked with 7 Hamas fighters standing over her. She also described the broken hip and the broken jaw that she suffered, as well as the mutilated and scarred soul that she carried home after her long, forced captivity. She talked about the PTSD, how the wail of an air siren or the thunder of an Iranian rocket fired at her country still instantly transports her back into that profound darkness in which she was held by violent men against her will, while feminists in the West marched in support of her rapists and brutalizers. You know, shame is not a powerful enough word. We're going to have to invent a new one for you. Ms. Grzycki spoke directly to al-Salem when she said, in captivity, Jewish women were raped, abused, and humiliated, and you, special rapporteur, you chose silence and denial. You say there was no evidence of sexual violence on October 7th. I'm standing here today not as a report, not as a statistic. I am a woman who survived. I am the living proof of sexual violence by Hamas. Then she asked the very question that hung in the air of that UN chamber like the ghosts of the dead. When I, another Israeli woman, begged not to be raped, why were you silent? Please look at me. Do you believe us now? Will you apologize? But of course, al-Salem sat silent and sneering because she is only against violence to the women on her team. She celebrates the rape of women on the other team. So she, a supposed women's right advocate, did not apologize for chanting, "Believe all women," and not having the guts to just say, "except for Jewish women," with blood running down the seat of their pants in Hamas's own videos, you bitch, whom she called liars. Ideology demands more loyalty than raped women do at the trash heap known as the UN. That was already known based on a well-documented record that is nothing short of a scandal. But let's focus on this one woman, whose scandal, in both the scale and complicity of which, would shame Harvey Weinstein himself. As UN Watch itself noted, al-Salem publicly declared just last November that, quote, no independent investigation found that rape took place on October 7th. An entirely false claim that was directly contradicted not only by the mountains of detailed and graphic evidence, including physical evidence, but also by a report that was issued months earlier by the UN itself, who found reasonable grounds to believe Hamas had committed mass sexual violence during their brutal attack, with an even higher evidentiary threshold being met for assaults when it came to the hostages that they forcefully held in captivity for years. Again, you bitch. As recently as April of this year, Al-Salem was still dismissing the survivors' own testimony as, quote, misinformation, which tells you everything you need to know about that term, claiming that the sexual violence was even being talked about just to justify genocide against Palestinians. To justify genocide against Palestinians. Projection much? Al-Salem's report to the Human Rights Council this June, titled Violence Against Mothers, completed the picture of this disgusting excuse for a woman. In that report, she accused Israel of reproductive violence and genocide, citing a single article from an openly anti-Israel outlet. An article is not evidence, much less from that place, while simultaneously discounting mountains of actual hard evidence, not hyperbolic propaganda from a media outlet, discounting evidence of true atrocities, not fake genocides, committed by her terrorist buddies. In that so-called report to the so-called Human Rights Council, she also lamented that U.S. and Israeli action against Iran might undermine Tehran's record on women's rights. You mean like the singer that they're about to flog 74 times? That record? A truly laughable position to try to take, and one that drew immediate ridicule from the prominent Iranian women's rights activist Messiah Linejad, who publicly celebrated the very strikes that Al-Salem was condemning on her behalf for purely propagandistic reasons. Her report about raped mothers made no mention of Hamas, zero. It also said nothing about the Israeli mothers that were murdered in front of their children, of which there are often films. Nothing about the families of the hostages being psychologically tortured for over 2 years as their loved ones were starved, raped, and beaten. Nothing about the deliberate new form of atrocity that was so systematic among Hamas that it has now been given its own name, genocide, forcing family members to rape each other or to watch their immediate family member being raped, all for the express purpose of permanently destroying family bonds because the victims can't even look at each other after that. A whole new level of cruelty. Ilana Grudzutsky offered the UN hypocrite Reem Al-Salem a simple choice this June 23rd. Be a human being. Look at her and reckon with the principle and the truth that she represents. Or willfully put on blinders, violate her again by calling her a liar despite the evidence that you just don't want to accept, and ignore both reality and human beings in favor of hatred and ideology. The UN chose the latter. which is no surprise to anyone who is familiar with their record, the one that stretches all the way back to their very earliest days. But while we wait for the bright day to dawn, when the UN finally loses all U.S. funding, cementing its nearly bankrupt state, so that we can close the doors and salt the earth and forget it ever existed, there was at least some current good news. On Thursday, the Supreme Court handed the current administration 2 major victories on the immigration front. In a 6-3 ruling that was written up by Justice Samuel Alito, the court upheld the federal government's lawful authority and right to turn away so-called asylum seekers, a term that is now so broad as to be entirely meaningless because it's now used to refer to basically all immigrants, at our ports of entry, based on a legal policy known as metering. The highest court in the land rejected the arguments that federal law requires our officials to process every migrant who arrives at the border seeking asylum, whether they actually qualify for it or not. That claim that the law says that we must do that is not true. And doing that is not our responsibility, it is our choice. In the second case, the Supreme Court also ruled 6-3 that the current administration can move forward with ending the temporary protected status of the roughly 350,000 foreign Haitians and the roughly 6,000 foreign Syrians that are currently living in the United States on a temporary basis. The Supreme Court ruled that temporary is not, in fact, code for permanent. Justice Alito again wrote up that decision in which he said that the federal courts exceeded the rightful jurisdiction of their authority by trying to interfere with immigration determinations that were not under their prerogative. Both of these 6-3 rulings, predictably, split along ideological lines, but they still represent significant wins for publicly supported efforts to tighten the border, for the enforcement of existing immigration policies that were all lawfully passed by Congress, and allow for responsible control over immigration. The Supreme Court also handed gun rights advocates a major victory that day by striking down Hawaii's controversial vampire rule, which effectively banned lawful concealed carry rights on most private property unless the owners explicitly granted permission, a reversal of the norm in which owners have to explicitly refuse permission. So in another 6-3 decision that likewise split straight down ideological lines, those who believe in the Constitution versus those who believe in getting whatever they want, no matter how unconstitutional it is, the nation's highest court rightly ruled that Hawaii's law obviously violated the constitutionally protected Second Amendment, with Justice Samuel Alito writing the ruling for the conservative majority. The law that was struck down by that ruling had created a default rule prohibiting gun holders with concealed carry permits from bringing firearms onto private property that was open to the public unless the property owner affirmatively authorized firearms or posted signs allowing them. The measure effectively transformed most public spaces into gun-free zones for lawful permit holders, and instead of private property owners having to explicitly post a sign barring guns from their property, this now overturned law forced lawful gun owners to obtain explicit permission before exercising their constitutionally protected right, which was why the law was dubbed the vampire rule by advocates of the Second Amendment, based on the classic lore that vampires can only enter someone's home if they are invited in. And that was the way that this law treated gun owners. Until Thursday, that is. But not all courts were putting the law first, which is why Florida's Attorney General James Uthemeier is moving to impeach an unfit judge for acquitting a mother who drowned her baby daughter, giving her a get-out-of-jail-free card on some downright stupid, there is no other word for it, grounds. Here's what happened. Judge Miguel de la O found 43-year-old Precious Bland not guilty of murder on the grounds of insanity, ruling that she was suffering from a psychotic episode, get this, caused by COVID-19. Now you might say, but bad colds don't cause psychosis, and you would be right. Which is why this judge is unfit to make rulings that affect all of society. You see, Bland reportedly drowned her 15-month-old daughter, Emmy, in a bathtub after screaming out, quote, "Jesus Christ is coming and COVID is going to kill us all," while insisting that the children needed to be baptized, which apparently meant drowned in her mind. When Bland's husband tried to intervene to save his baby girl, his wife stabbed him several times with a knife that she just happened to have. She also stabbed their 16-year-old daughter. Her husband escaped the scene with 4 of the couple's children, but not before Bland had drowned their baby daughter. Bland conveniently waived her right to a trial by a jury of her peers who would have convicted her baby-killing ass, and was instead given a bench trial, which gives the one judge absolute authority in handing down a one-man verdict. And he ruled that you can drown an innocent baby if you're scared of the cold. The defense argued that Bland was suffering from temporary insanity, which has a clinical standard, that they claimed was caused by COVID-19. Her attorney, Larry Hanfield, laughably argued that COVID-19 can cause paranoia and suicidal thoughts in some people. Again, terms that have a standard, saying that Bland was unaware of what she was doing, of which there is no evidence to support that claim, and quite a bit to debunk it. She seemed to be fully aware of what she was doing, but she just believed that the circumstances justified it. And the judge agreed. The prosecution vigorously rejected this claim, saying during opening statements, she was verbalizing that the baby needed to stop breathing. So she was holding her down to make sure she stopped breathing, end quote. Proving that she understood fully what she was doing. And she was not an insane person who thought that her baby was a mermaid who could breathe underwater or something. She intended to kill. Intent debunks insanity. She intended to kill. She believed COVID was going to kill them all, and she wanted to do it instead, because that was a sure thing, and COVID wasn't. Otherwise, you would have just waited. I mean, if you're going to die either way, wait and see. You might survive. Thinking that COVID's going to kill you doesn't mean I'm going to make sure that I die. To top it all off, despite using an insanity argument, Bland's attorney, Larry Hanfield, not only crowed about this being the first successful COVID-related insanity defense in the country, but he also did not want to have Bland institutionalized for her supposed insanity, which is what is supposed to happen when you commit a crime out of insanity. You are not supposed to go free. You are supposed to be committed against your will to a mental institution instead of being committed against your will to a prison. But her attorney argued that his client's fictional bout of insanity was conveniently entirely temporary, and that institutionalization was therefore unnecessary. But the judge who made this unjustifiable ruling may face the outcomes of it before then. A.G. Uthemeyer posted an announcement that his office would be drafting articles of impeachment for the judge that is clearly the only insane person involved in this case, which cannot be retried now due to double jeopardy. As A.G. Uthemeyer wrote, "This was a bench trial. It's time to impeach this judge. My office will be drafting articles of impeachment, and we look forward to working with all legislators who will support." Florida's Republican governor, Ron DeSantis, immediately expressed that support for impeaching this irresponsible judge and called on the Florida House to do its duty. Judge De La O has yet to decide whether Bland will be institutionalized or even be required to have any further treatment after grounding a 15-month-old baby. Meanwhile, his fate will be decided by the people's elected lawmakers. When you prove yourself to be untrustworthy of wielding power, it is taken away from you and given to someone more worthy, as it should be. As the week drew to a close, there were also changes taking place in the approach to foreign policy by the United States. According to U.S. Central Command, on Friday, the United States carried out strikes against Iran after Tehran attacked a commercial cargo ship that was coming through the Strait of Hormuz. Here is what happened. CENTCOM said that American forces struck Iran's missile and drone storage facilities, as well as their coastal radar sites, in response to Iran's unprovoked attack of the MV Ever Lovely, a cargo vessel that was sailing under the flag of Singapore. According to the military, on June 25th, that ship was exiting the Strait of Hormuz along the Omani coast when it was hit by a one-way attack drone that was launched by Iran, meaning a suicide drone. CENTCOM pointed out that Iran's attack on a commercial vessel clearly violated the ceasefire and undermined freedom of the seas along one of the world's most important maritime trade routes. The military emphasized that U.S. forces remain in that region to protect commercial shipping and to enforce the agreement that was theoretically reached with Iran. Central Command stated that, quote, CENTCOM forces continue to provide safe passage coordination and support to commercial vessels transiting the strait. The U.S. military remains present and vigilant to ensure all aspects of the agreement with Iran are adhered to, obeyed, and in full force and effect. Meanwhile, the Daily Wire's Ben Shapiro asserted that the latest move in this game of chicken was proof that the foreign policy of peace through strength in America's approach was back, and I hope to heaven he is right about that. Shapiro laid out exactly what had transpired in the hours leading up to the U.S. response to Iran's decision to resume hostilities in blatant violation of the ceasefire, and he noted that Trump had quickly made it clear that he was not going to allow Tehran to violate the agreement. He can't, for both our credibility on the world stage and for the safety of the world. Ben went on to assert that the president's unwavering poker face reaction to Iranian attacks was proof of a shift in the thinking of the administration, demonstrating that Ronald Reagan's peace through strength foreign policy was back at the helm as it was during Trump's first term. Vice President J.D. Vance also responded to news of the retaliatory strike, saying that the United States had every intention of holding to the terms of the ceasefire agreement, but our country would not stand down if Iran continued to violate the deal. We are not going to have a one-sided agreement where our hands are tied and the other side fires at will. That just is not going to fly, so it's up to Iran. But the vice president promised violence will be met with violence. And these strikes back up the words of that promise. I like to end on some good news when I can, so I am happy to announce that Gracie the giraffe, who captured the simulated heart of the entire internet when she disappeared into the Texas desert, was found early Friday morning during a helicopter search. According to a report from the Real County Sheriff's Office, Vic Jones, the manager of Cedar Hollow Ranch, from which Gracie made her escape, participated in an aerial scouting mission with Jeff Hill of Concho Aviation, and from their helicopter in the sky up above, Mr. Hill spotted Gracie roughly 4 miles south of the ranch. Mr. Jones joyfully told everyone, "She's standing, she's very calm, she looked good. There's a lot of water there, a lot of food, stuff like that. She's looking good, doing good." Others who had taken part in the extensive search for our spotted friend expressed their own elation upon hearing the news that the elusive giraffe had finally been found. Real County's Sheriff Nathan Johnson joked about Gracie's "catch me if you can, sucker" attitude while expressing triumph that we found her, she's fat and happy, and promising that they would bring in a team to sedate her and get her home safe and sound. No worse for the wear. That's it for me this week. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, I would ask you to please help me build this podcast into a success by clicking the like and follow buttons, because that is what does the trick in making these things successful, and it doesn't cost anything to do. And I hope that you come back again next week. Until then, have a good week, my friends.